that you want to know. It's really hard to pick top 10 things for financial aid. It just seems like so much. So I'm just going to try to give you some of the highlights. And if you have questions, then I'll definitely be around later to talk about it. So if I had to think of one thing, I was like, what are my top 10 things? March 2nd is without a doubt, like if I could only leave you with one thing, March 2nd would be the very thing I'd leave you with, because I think everything else, or many other things, can be resolved, at least if you get the application in by March 2nd. In previous years, like Cal Grant was all about the March 2nd deadline. At San Francisco State, for the first time this year, if you didn't get your application in by March 2nd, we ran out of state university grant. So students were losing out at like $4,000 just because they'd always turned it in after March 2nd and still gotten it. So we're really tight. I mean, I think overall in terms of the budgets, they're just, smushing on deadlines in all kinds of ways. Oh, we can't do that, you missed the deadline. Oh, you missed the deadline. So March 2nd is just so top of the line. In terms of completed FAFSA facts, as you can see from this chart that I prepared, filling out the FAFSA is really only the first step. So even if you don't go down and look to all these little details, you're like, dang, there's a lot on that page between the time when you actually fill out your PIN and start your FAFSA to getting your money down here. So if you're going to San Francisco State, this is specifically for your students. You can find out where they are at any point in the process, but just in general, these are the main steps you have to do in terms of filling out your FAFSA. So knowing some of those pieces, I think, is just important. And then, overall, you guys probably know some of this information, but just in terms of biological and adoptive parents are the only information that goes on the FAFSA. There's some kind of information that they're living with their mom, they're living with their grandma, they're living with their sister, or they're living with somebody else. You need to contact your financial aid officer and talk to them about how they can get a dependency override. Because specifically, if you put in that other information, it's going to get all cogged up in this process, and FAFSA won't process it. For students that have socials, as you guys already know already, you have to be a citizen or have permanent residency status. If the parents don't have a social security number, you can just put zeros in there and have them send in the signature page. So making sure that the student is still meeting the requirements for the March 2nd deadline, and the parents will just send in the signature page to follow. And then if the income changes, contact your school. You just always want to be in school. There's special circumstances petitions. It's always based on the year before, as you know. They usually make you wait to June to talk to the school, but definitely be in communication with the school. And then don't wait, estimate. This is the biggest thing I think that we can tell students in terms of for their FAFSA, or not the biggest, I'll probably say it a couple of times. But when they're filling out their FAFSA, many students are like, oh, my parents didn't do their taxes yet, I can't fill out the FAFSA. That's not true. And definitely they should go ahead and fill out the FAFSA, estimate with last year's information, or even estimate what they think this year's information is going to be. Submit it, meet that March 2nd deadline, and then after they do their taxes, go back and submit a correction page so that they can update that information, change the question from will file taxes to did file, and then just and fix it up that way. Because again, like I was saying, March 2nd is just so incredibly important for deadlines. Then, of course, everybody wants to get in tight with CSAC, so ensuring everybody's GPA verification is formed. I love that story that you gave in terms of making sure that everybody's is in.
What's CSAC stand for?
The California Student Aid Commission, and the California Student Aid Commission is the one that gives out the Cal Grants, so you definitely want to get in tight with them. Really encourage students to sign up for the csac.ca.gov. For those of you that know about the Cal Grant already, it's just a great opportunity. It's anywhere from like $4,000 to up to almost $12,000 per year for 4 years, and their income eligibility is much better than the FAFSA eligibility is for income. You can also check that out right online on csac.ca.gov and just put up income ceilings in the search. They'll pull up and you can be like, oh, family of 4, you can make this much and still get the FAFSA, but you have to have your March 2nd FAFSA in and the GPA verification form. So just either making it the school culture, making it the student culture that everybody's looking out for each other. And then also, I just put it out there for students, if they're considering the community college, I would strongly encourage them to consider deferring their Cal Grant. It's only 8 semesters of the grant, and so for students that take more than 4 years to get through their college, then if they get into that 5th year, then they'll be in trouble at the 4-year university. Whereas if they're going to the community college, often if you meet eligibility requirements for the CSAC, for the Cal Grant, you can meet eligibility for the BOG fee waiver. So the BOG fee waiver could waive your fees, which is the same thing that Cal Grant's going to do as a Cal Grant A. And so just encourage them to do it. Not a requirement, of course, just something to consider. And then being in communication with your financial aid office. I love that you're like, people got to get in there, look at their portals, find out what's going on. At San Francisco State, inside.sfsu.edu is the portal. You can check your financial aid, you can check your your status. It's on this little report, this little chart that I made. But also, what if financial aid's waiting for some documents for you? So many students that I know are answering the phones are like, I did my FAFSA way back then. Yeah, and we asked you for documents like a month after them, and it's been 8 months since then, and we haven't heard anything from you. So just communicating that to students, they need to follow up on it. Don't be afraid of being a pest. Just call your financial aid. Every school that you apply to, if you're seriously thinking about going there, call that school and say, I'd just like to check the status of my application. It's really simple, and then they can know if they need to do something else. And also just having them check the email that they applied with, because sometimes students are just like, they never check it and we're like waiting for information. Also, this is something I think is really important. When students are applying for financial aid, you want to list every single FAFSA, every single school on the FAFSA. You can list 10 at one time, wait a week, go back, delete those, and add more schools. So, but I tell students, when you're listing out all of those applications and you're getting all those admission letters that are telling you that got in, you also want to line up all those financial aid letters and see, okay, I got in, but who's going to give me money, how am I going to pay for it? And also encouraging your students to think about 4 years of paying. Because it's really hard for a student to be like, yeah, I got in, I got enough money, I got there for my first year, then have the second year come around and be like, dang, that's not what's going to happen now. So not in any way stifling people's dreams, but just being like, okay, let's make a plan. This is your first year, and if you're applying for a lot of scholarships in your first year, make sure you're doing that when you get to your freshman year, so you can just kind of keep that ball rolling. So I encourage students when they get their financial aid offers from every school, accept it at every school. It's not illegal, it's not wrong in any way to accept your financial aid. At the point at which you know which school you're going to go back and cancel it at all the other schools. Because you can only receive financial aid at one school. But if I'm like, oh, you know what, San Francisco State offered me this, but I want to see what's going to happen with Berkeley first, and then I don't reply within that time, I might not be able to get all of that money reinstated because some of that money is first come, first served. So that's something definitely to be thinking about. And for scholarships, I love the story about the 70 scholarships. You know, I think apply for as many scholarships as possible. And I always break the scholarships into 2 parts because I think sometimes people get really focused on FAFSA. We did our March 2nd deadline, but really work your scholarship list. I have this little chart that I created for students just because I think if you're doing your job well, you've looked at a whole bunch of different places, you've got this scholarship, this database here, you just line it all up on your chart. And you can get this on our San Francisco State website. I have some here. But you're just basically laying out, okay, this is the name, this is the amount, this is the deadline, this is the contact information. And then I tell students when you're looking for scholarships, I see it as 2 pieces. One, you've got to look for the scholarships. You want to apply early. And in some ways, because you guys are really some of the movers and shakers, facilitating putting this into the school culture is really important. The scholarships for a whole bunch of things, but after you've listed the scholarships, then working on writing your essay, I encourage students all the time with one solid essay that they have. This one might be a little bit more about grades, this one is about community service, this is about being the first person in your family, but you have that one solid essay, then you just work the list with your essay. So I think that's a really helpful way for students to do it, and also just in terms of like students like, oh, I don't want to write and do these other things, but if you figure it takes you 4 or 5 hours to write a really solid essay, and then you can work that essay list over and over again, you may just pay like $200 an hour to get a $1,000 scholarship. So definitely worth people's while in terms of looking into that. And then just in terms of helping AB 540 students, Jose is going to talk, and Daniel, and I'm sorry, Oriana, are going to talk about that more specifically, but just in terms of from the school's perspective sides, making sure that every single student who's an AB 540 student specifically, although every other student too, to make sure that they give that scholarship letter to the school, so the school can give them a deferment. Because in the 4-year universities, you have to pay before you sign up for classes. And if you haven't, lots of times for AB 540 students coming in, their status hasn't been recorded yet as an AB 540 student before they're going to the orientation and signing up for classes, because you need final transcripts. So if you can send that scholarship letter in, get them the deferment, they're not starting out kind of like behind the 8 ball because they haven't been able to sign up for classes. And also, just connect into resources. Make a friend in the enrollment part at each school. Now, I'm not saying there's one at every single school, but since I've started working and doing volunteer within the AB 540 community, there's a lot of different people at different schools. You just kind of have to dig around and find that one person that's going to help you open the doors that you need. And also, there's just different steps in terms of, for San Francisco State, we developed this checklist in terms of specifically for AB 540 students. What are the extra steps that AB 540 students have to do? So not every school is going to have a list, but find the person who knows what the steps are that you need to do. That could be really helpful. And then just make sure you can make a friend in financial aid. You already have one, that's me. It's my contact information. And I think that wherever you can go, if you can just find somebody in the financial aid office where a lot of your students are going to and work that list, work that connection, then that can be really helpful for you. So that's my top 10. Jose?